Imagine opening your mouth and speaking English with ease. Your thoughts are clear, your words come naturally. You do not pause to translate every sentence in your head, and you are not controlled by the fear of making mistakes. Perhaps that feels impossible to you right now. But what if the real secret to speaking English fluently is not learning more grammar or memorizing hundreds of difficult words? What if the real secret is learning how to train your brain to use English in a faster and more natural way? Your brain becomes better at what you ask it to do repeatedly. When you train it consistently, the connections you need become stronger, quicker, and easier to access. The problem is that many learners spend years studying English, but they rarely train themselves to think and respond in English. They recognize words, understand grammar rules, and complete exercises. Yet, speaking still feels slow and stressful. In this video, I want to show you how to change that. You will discover practical listening habits, simple thinking exercises, and effective speaking techniques that can help English feel more familiar and automatic. And if you enjoy practical lessons that help you speak with greater confidence, subscribe to Muniba Academy and continue learning with us. English learning is often presented as a process of memorizing vocabulary lists and studying grammar rules. Many learners spend hours trying to remember difficult words, verb forms, and sentence structures. They believe that the more words they memorize, the more fluently they will speak. But this approach often leads to disappointment. A learner may recognize thousands of English words and still be unable to use them naturally. In a real conversation, learning words is not enough. If you want to speak English fluently, you need to train your brain, not only fill your memory. When you hear or read English, your brain begins connecting sounds, meanings, situations, and language patterns. At first, these connections may be weak. That is why a beginner often needs a long pause before answering a simple question. The learner may be trying to remember a grammar rule, find the right vocabulary, translate a thought, and control pronunciation at the same time. With so many tasks happening together, speaking naturally becomes extremely difficult. Fortunately, these connections can improve through the right kind of practice. Think about physical training. If you exercise a muscle regularly, it becomes stronger and more efficient. An athlete practices the same movements repeatedly until the body can perform them quickly and naturally. Speaking English develops in a similar way. When you listen, think, and speak in English regularly, your brain creates stronger pathways for understanding and communication. With enough meaningful repetition, sentences that once required great effort begin to feel familiar. You place it inside a sentence, speak it aloud, and use it to express one of your own thoughts. That active use encourages your brain to process the language more deeply. Over time, you can understand and respond without needing to think about every individual word. Language is not simply a collection of separate words. It is a system of familiar patterns. Imagine that you regularly hear sentences such as, "I'm getting ready for work," "I'm getting ready for class," "I'm getting ready to leave." After hearing this structure many times, your brain begins to recognize the pattern. Later, you can create a new sentence naturally. "I'm getting ready for work," "I'm getting ready for class," "I'm getting ready to leave." After hearing this structure many times, your brain begins to recognize the pattern. Your brain recognized a familiar structure and used it to express a new idea. This is how much of natural language learning happens. Repeated exposure helps the brain recognize common structures, rhythms, and combinations of words. Listening to podcasts, watching useful videos, and reading clear English give your brain the input it needs. In the beginning, you may not understand every sentence, and that is completely normal. Your first goal is not to understand 100% of everything you hear. Your goal is to give your brain enough understand every sentence, and this draft. Every time you speak, your brain must organize an idea, find suitable words, arrange them into a sentence, and send that sentence to your mouth. Even a very simple sentence strengthens the connection between thought and speech. You can begin with what is happening around you. "I'm drinking a glass of water." "I'm studying English." "I'm sitting beside the window." "I'm waiting for a message." These sentences may seem easy, but they are doing something important. They are teaching your brain how to turn a real thought directly into spoken English. Once a sentence feels comfortable, expand it. "I'm drinking a glass of water." because I've just finished exercising. I'm studying English. I'm studying English. Once a sentence feels comfortable, expand it. I'm drinking a glass of water, because I've just finished exercising. I'm studying English. I'm drinking a glass of water, because I've just finished exercising. I'm sitting beside the window and I can hear people talking outside. Begin with what you can say, and then add more detail. Consistency is one of the most important parts of this training. Some learners study intensely for several hours, and then avoid English for the rest of the week. This makes progress slower because the brain needs regular contact and repetition to maintain strong language connections. 10 or 15 focused minutes every day can be more effective than one long session, followed by several days of silence. Daily practice keeps English active in your mind. It teaches your brain that English is not something you use only during a lesson. You can create practice opportunities almost anywhere. While preparing a meal, describe what you are doing. I'm washing the vegetables. I'm heating the pan. I'm preparing dinner for my family. While walking outside, describe what you notice. The sky looks cloudy. The weather feels cooler today. There are several people waiting at the bus stop. The street is much busier than it was this morning. These small exercises turn ordinary activities into valuable speaking practice. When you repeat them regularly, your brain slowly becomes more. You may pause often, forget familiar vocabulary, or make mistakes in simple sentences. That does not mean your practice is failing. Every honest attempt to think or speak in English gives your brain another opportunity to learn. Gradually, the pauses become shorter, familiar expressions begin to appear more quickly, and speaking starts to feel less uncomfortable. Confidence grows when your brain becomes familiar with using English. Instead of worrying about every grammar rule, while you speak, you begin paying attention to the meaning you want to communicate. You realize that conversation is about sharing thoughts, needs, experiences, and emotions. When your attention moves from perfection to communication, your mind relaxes. A relaxed mind can retrieve language more easily and respond more naturally. The message is simple. Fluency does not come only from memorizing vocabulary. It develops through regular exposure, active use, meaningful repetition, and consistent habits. When English becomes a form of daily training, your brain gradually adapts. The language becomes easier to understand and much easier to use. When you want to speak English, you may first create the complete sentence in your own language. Then you search for English words to replace each part. This may seem helpful at first, but it quickly becomes a barrier to fluent communication. When you translate word by word, your brain has to complete two separate tasks. First, it creates the thought in your native language. Then, it attempts to rebuild the same thought in English. That additional step requires time and mental energy. During a real conversation, people may speak quickly. You do not have unlimited time to construct every response. Translation can also produce unnatural sentences, because languages do not always organize ideas in the same way. A sentence that sounds completely natural in your native language may require a different structure in English. If you translate it word for word, the result may sound confusing or unnatural, even when every individual word seems correct. To speak more fluently, you need to help your brain create thoughts directly in English. This does not happen immediately, and you do not need to force yourself to stop translating every thought in a single day. This does not happen immediately, and you do not need to force yourself to stop translating every thought in a single day. When you see a table, try to connect the object directly with the English word table. Do not first say the word in your native language and then translate it. When you see rain, think it's raining. When you feel tired, think I need to rest. When you are hungry, think I want something to eat. These thoughts are simple enough to form directly in English. With repetition, they become automatic. The next step is to think in short sentences about your daily activities. When you wake up, you might think, I'm looking for my shirt. I need to leave in 20 minutes. I hope the traffic is not too heavy. I need to get out of bed. I have a lot to do today. During lunch, you might think, this food tastes good. I'm eating too quickly. I should drink more water. This private inner speech is a safe and effective form of practice. No one is listening. No one is correcting you. You can experiment without pressure and repeat a sentence as many times as necessary. As these simple thoughts become easier, make them slightly longer. Instead of saying, "I need to leave," say, "I need to leave soon," or "I'll be late for work." Instead of saying, "The food is good," say, "The food is delicious, but it is a little too spicy for me." Your goal is to create a sentence directly in English at a level you can comfortably control. Images can also help you reduce translation. Choose a photograph of an ordinary place, such as a market, a park, a train station, or a family kitchen. Look carefully at the image and describe what you can see. There is a woman carrying a shopping bag. 2 children are standing near the entrance. A man might be checking the time. The market appears busy. Then imagine what might be happening. The woman may be buying food for dinner. You can use the same method with objects around your home. Look at a lamp and say, "This is a lamp. It is beside my bed. I usually turn it on when I read at night." Look at a refrigerator and say, "The refrigerator is in the kitchen. There is not much food inside it. I need to go shopping tomorrow." One object can produce several useful sentences. The more often you make these direct connections, the less dependent you become on translation. Another effective method is to learn words inside phrases. Learn, make a decision. Do not learn only afraid. Learn afraid of making mistakes. Learn, pay attention. Learn interested in learning more. Phrases are easier to use because they give your brain a ready-made structure. In conversation, you do not need to build everything from the beginning. You can retrieve a familiar phrase and add the information you need. For example, "I need to make a decision. I made a difficult decision yesterday. It may take me a few days to make a final decision." The phrase remains familiar, while the rest of the sentence changes. This is how useful patterns create speed. You can practice one pattern by creating several personal examples. Take the structure. I'm trying to become more confident when I speak. Now, choose one of those sentences and extend it. I'm trying to improve my pronunciation. So, I listen carefully and repeat short sentences every day. This type of practice trains you to form English sentences without translating each one from your native language. You are learning how English expresses an idea, then using that structure to express an idea of your own. It is also important to accept simple English perfectly in English. Instead, ask yourself, what is the simplest way to communicate this idea? Suppose you cannot remember the word exhausted. You can say, "I'm extremely tired." If you cannot remember disappointed, you can say, "I'm not happy with what happened." If you forget the word appointment, you can say, "I have a meeting with the doctor at 3. Communication does not stop because one word is missing. Fluent speakers do not always use the most sophisticated word. They use the clearest language available to them and keep the conversation moving. Thinking in English does not mean that every sentence in your mind must be grammatically perfect. Mistakes are part of that development. If you wait until you can create perfect sentences, you may spend years waiting. But if you begin with simple imperfect thoughts and continue practicing, your sentences will gradually become more accurate and natural. Repetition helps this change happen. When you use the same useful structure in several different situations, your brain becomes familiar with it. The sentence pattern becomes easier to retrieve, and you spend less time thinking about grammar. Learning any language becomes easier when your brain meets that language regularly. One of the most effective ways to improve your speaking is to surround yourself with English every day. This is often called immersion. Immersion does not mean that you must study English for several hours without stopping. It simply means creating an environment in which English becomes a normal part of your daily life. When your brain frequently hears and sees English, it gradually becomes familiar with the language. Sounds that once seemed unclear becomes easier to recognize. Some learners believe that immersion is only possible if they move to an English-speaking country. That is not true. You can create a useful English environment wherever you live. With a phone, an internet connection, and a few consistent habits, you can bring English into your home and your daily routine. The goal is not to remove your native language from your life. The goal is to give English a small but permanent place in your day. Listening is one of the easiest ways to begin. You can listen to an English podcast while walking, commuting, exercising, preparing food, or relaxing at home. Podcasts allow you to hear real voices, useful expressions, and natural conversations. You do not need to understand every word for the experience to be valuable. When you listen regularly, your brain is becoming familiar with English pronunciation, rhythm, and sentence structure. At first, you may hear a fast stream of sounds. After repeated exposure, your brain begins separating that stream into words and phrases. Something that sounded unclear last month may suddenly sound obvious today. That improvement is not magic, it is the result of repeated contact. You might watch videos about travel, food, education, technology, personal development, or daily life. Choose subjects you already enjoy. When the topic interests you, you are more likely to continue listening. Television programs and films can also introduce you to English in realistic situations. You can observe how people greet one another, ask questions, disagree politely, express emotions, and respond during a conversation. Use them to connect the sounds you hear with the words on the screen. However, do not depend on subtitles forever. After watching a short scene with subtitles, play it again without them. Focus on the situation and the main message. You may understand more than you expect. As your listening becomes stronger, use subtitles less often. They should support your listening, not replace it. Music can also help you become familiar with the sound of English. Songs contain rhythm, repetition, and emotion, which can make certain words and phrases easier to remember. Use music as an enjoyable addition to your routine, but remember that song lyrics do not always reflect ordinary conversation. Songs may stretch words, change normal stress, or use poetic grammar. Enjoy them for sound and motivation, while learning conversational patterns from clear spoken English. Reading is another important part of immersion. Short articles, simple stories, and accessible books allow you to see how English sentences are organized. Reading introduces vocabulary in context and shows you how ideas connect across complete sentences. A short article about travel, health, food, hobbies, work, or technology may be more useful than a complicated book you are not ready to enjoy. Even a few focused paragraphs each day can strengthen your vocabulary and your understanding of English structure. When you find a useful expression, do not only underline it, say it aloud, then create a new sentence with it. If you read, "I ran out of time," you might say, "I ran out of time." You might label the mirror, the refrigerator, a drawer, a shelf, or the light switch. Every time you see the label, your brain connects the English word directly with the object. This can be useful when you are still learning common household vocabulary, but do not stop with the name of the object. After you become familiar with the word, create a sentence. The mirror needs to be cleaned. There is some fruit in the refrigerator. I keep my documents in this drawer. The books on that shelf, the language settings on one application you use frequently. Choose something familiar, such as a music application or a simple calendar, because you already understand how the application works. You can connect English words such as search, save, share, edit, and delete with actions you perform every day. The purpose of immersion is not to make your life difficult. It is to create frequent, manageable contact with English. 10 or 15 minutes of daily exposure can produce meaningful results when you use that time consistently. A short English video today, a podcast tomorrow morning, and a simple article in the evening all keep the language active in your memory. Daily contact is often more effective than a long session that happens only once in a while. When English becomes part of your entertainment and ordinary activities, learning can feel more natural and less stressful. You are no longer depending entirely on willpower to sit at a desk and study. You are allowing English to appear in moments that already exist. Over time, unfamiliar sounds become familiar. Words that once felt difficult begin to appear naturally in your thoughts. Your brain starts recognizing expressions more quickly and responding with less effort. The sound may create some familiarity, but your progress will be limited if you never focus on the meaning. To improve more effectively, you need active listening. Active listening means giving your full attention to a short piece of spoken English. You listen for the speaker's message, pronunciation, tone, rhythm, and choice of words. You are not trying to capture every single word. You are trying to understand what the speaker wants to communicate. Choose a short recording that matches your level. It may be a 30-second conversation, 1 minute from a podcast, or a small part of a video. Listen once without stopping. Ask yourself, what is the main idea? Then listen again. This time notice the expressions the speaker uses. Where does the voice become stronger? Where does the speaker pause? Which words seem to carry the main meaning? Pause after one sentence. Think about what you heard, then say the idea aloud in your own words. Suppose the speaker says, "I planned to finish the report this morning, but an unexpected phone call took most of my time." You might explain, she wanted to complete her report, but a long phone call interrupted her. Next, listen to the original sentence again, and repeat it as closely as you can. This creates a connection between hearing and speaking. Short listening sessions are especially useful because they allow you to concentrate without becoming overwhelmed. If you choose 10 minutes of difficult speech, your attention may disappear after the first minute. A short recording can be repeated several times. Each repetition can have a different purpose. The first time, listen for the main idea. The second time, notice the words. The third time, focus on pronunciation and rhythm. The fourth time, repeat with the speaker. The fifth time, explain the message independently. This is often more valuable than listening to a large amount of content only once. Listening is the foundation of speaking, because your brain must first become familiar with how English sounds. Think about how children learn their first language. They spend a long period hearing voices before they can form complete sentences. Their brains absorb sounds, expressions, and patterns through repeated exposure. As adult learners, we learn differently, and can use explanations and study methods. But the basic connection between listening and speaking remains important. At first, natural English may sound too fast, because spoken words do not always sound the way they appear on a page. Speakers connect words, reduce certain sounds, and place greater stress on the most important parts of a sentence. For example, the written question is, "What are you going to do?" In natural conversation, it may sound much faster and more connected. If you have only seen the sentence in writing, you may struggle to recognize it when someone says it quickly. Regular listening teaches your brain to recognize these natural changes. Pronunciation also becomes easier to understand when you hear words in complete sentences. The same letters may represent different sounds, and some written letters may become very soft or silent in speech. Listening helps you learn what words actually sound like. It also teaches you the rhythm of English. Every language has its own rhythm. In English, speakers usually give more stress to the words carrying the main information, and less stress to smaller grammatical words. Listen to this sentence. "I need to send the email before lunch." The words need send email before lunch. "I need to call my manager after the meeting." "I need to buy some groceries on the way home." When you listen carefully to natural English, your brain begins to absorb these patterns. Later, your own sentences may follow a clearer and more natural rhythm. Listening also teaches sentence structure, without requiring you to analyze every rule. You may repeatedly hear expressions such as, "I'm thinking about changing jobs," "I'm thinking about taking a course," "I'm thinking about starting a new morning routine." Exposure and repetition make the structure familiar. Familiarity makes it easier to retrieve while speaking. Familiarity makes it easier to retrieve while speaking. Listening also builds vocabulary more naturally. When you hear a word inside a real situation, the context helps you understand and remember it. You learn not only the definition, but also how the word behaves inside a sentence. Instead of memorizing the word delay alone, you may hear the flight was delayed because of the weather. Then you understand the word through a meaningful situation. You can create your own examples. The meeting was delayed for 30 minutes. My order was delayed because the restaurant was busy. Context gives the word a place in your memory. Regular listening also trains your brain to process English at a more realistic speed. During a conversation, people do not pause after every word. Your brain must recognize language while the message continues. In the beginning, you may feel that the next sentence arrives before you have understood the previous one. With repeated listening, your brain becomes faster at identifying familiar sounds and expressions. Eventually, you stop trying to translate every word. You listen for groups of meaning. This makes real conversations less exhausting. Even 5 or 10 minutes of focused listening each day can create significant progress over time. As your listening becomes stronger, speaking often becomes easier because your brain already knows how common sentences sound. Now we can take active listening one step further. One of the most effective techniques for training your ears, brain, and mouth together is called shadowing. Shadowing is the practice of listening to a speaker and repeating the words immediately. You follow the original voice closely, almost like a shadow following a person. The idea is simple, but the exercise can be extremely powerful. Choose a short recording from a clear speaker. Listen to one sentence and repeat it immediately. Try to imitate not only the words but also the pronunciation, stress, rhythm, and tone. Suppose the speaker, if the sentence is too fast, pause the recording and practice it in smaller pieces. I'll call you as soon as I get home. Then connect the two parts. I'll call you as soon as I get home. When the sentence feels comfortable, play the audio again and speak along with the original voice. Shadowing forces your brain to listen and respond, almost at the same time. It processes the sound and immediately guides your mouth to reproduce it. This strengthens the connection between listening and speaking. Many learners spend most of their study time reading, memorizing vocabulary, and completing grammar exercises. Speaking requires physical coordination. Your tongue, lips, jaw, breath, and voice must work together to produce unfamiliar sound combinations. Shadowing gives your mouth repeated practice with those movements. Some English sounds may not exist in your native language. They can feel uncomfortable at first because your speaking muscles are not accustomed to producing them. By hearing and imitating clear examples, your mouth gradually learns the necessary positions and movements. Do not expect an immediate transformation. Pronunciation develops through patient repetition. During the third attempt, your rhythm improves. During the fourth attempt, the words connect more smoothly. During the fifth attempt, the sentence begins to feel like one complete unit. Each repetition gives your brain and mouth more information. Shadowing also helps you notice tone. A speaker's tone changes according to meaning and emotion. A question may rise or fall. An expression of surprise sounds different from a calm statement. Important words off. Shadowing helps you hear these differences and reproduce them. As a result, your English can sound more expressive and less mechanical. The method also improves listening because you cannot repeat what you have not heard clearly. When you know that you must speak immediately, your attention becomes sharper. You begin noticing small sounds that you previously ignored. You hear where words connect and where syllables become reduced. As your ears become more accurate, real conversations become easier to understand. To practice shadowing successfully, choose material that is appropriate for your level. A fast movie scene full of slang may be too difficult at the beginning. Select a clear podcast, a simple interview, a short conversation, or a learning video with natural but understandable speech. Begin with one sentence at a time. Listen carefully. Read the sentence if a transcript is available. Check that you understand the meaning. Listen again. Repeat slowly. Then imitate the original speed and rhythm. Finally, say the sentence without the recording. You can also make the sentence personal. If the original says, "I haven't had time to finish the book," you might say, "I haven't had time to finish the book." Repeating the same sentence several times is not a waste of time. Each repetition allows you to hear more clearly and speak with greater control. However, do not practice for so long that your attention disappears. 5 focused minutes can be enough. Practice 1 or 2 sentences carefully every day. Consistency will give you better results than one exhausting session. Shadowing can also reduce your fear of speaking. Many learners become nervous because they must create ideas and sentences at the same time. During shadowing, the words have already been provided. You can focus on sound, rhythm, and mouth movement without worrying about what to say. This removes some of the pressure and helps you become comfortable hearing your own voice in English. As your mouth becomes familiar with common expressions, those expressions become easier to use independently. You begin speaking with less hesitation because your brain already knows the pattern and your mouth has already practiced the movement. Shadowing is more than a pronunciation exercise. It combines focused listening, immediate response, rhythm, memory, and physical speaking practice. More quickly, your pronunciation will become clearer, your sentences will flow more smoothly, and responding in English will feel less frightening. But there is another powerful way to practice speaking when no teacher or conversation partner is available. You can create the conversation before it happens. You can create the conversation before it happens. This is the power of visualization. Visualization means imagining a real situation and practicing the English you might use there. Your brain connects language more easily, with images, emotions, and experiences, than with isolated words. Imagine the person waiting to take your order. And speak. Could I have a cup of coffee, please? I would also like something to eat. Could I have the bill when you have a moment? The situation is imaginary, but the language practice is real. You can imagine yourself shopping, asking for directions, attending an interview, meeting a new colleague, or checking into a hotel. Each situation gives you a reason to form sentences and prepare useful responses. Suppose you imagine entering a bookstore. You might say, I'm looking for a book about personal development. Could you recommend something for an intermediate English learner? Do you have a less expensive edition? It has already practiced the language. Do not memorize one long conversation word for word. Real people may not respond exactly as you expect. Instead, prepare several flexible phrases that can work in many situations. Learn phrases such as, could you help me with this? I'm looking for. Could you explain that again? I'm not sure I understand. What would you recommend? These complete speaking units are more useful than isolated vocabulary, because your brain can retrieve them quickly. You can then expand one of the sentences. I would like to change my appointment, because I will not be available on Monday. One familiar structure can help you express many different ideas. As you practice, remember that mistakes are not proof that you are bad at English. They are evidence that you are using the language. Many learners remain silent because they are afraid of choosing the wrong tense, pronouncing a word incorrectly, or sounding less intelligent than they really are. She waits, becomes more nervous, and finally says nothing. Now imagine that she simply asks, excuse me, how can I get to the train station? Perhaps her pronunciation is not perfect, but the other person understands. She receives the information she needs and completes a real conversation. That small experience builds more confidence than another hour of silent preparation. Confidence does not always come before action. Very often action creates confidence. Each time you speak despite feeling nervous, you show yourself that communication is possible. Each time someone understands you, your fear becomes a little weaker. Focus on being clear, not perfect. If you forget a word, explain it with simpler language. That's not experience. Excuse me, how can I get to the train station? If you cannot remember pharmacy, say the place where I can buy medicine. If clears through you forget charger, say the thing I use to give power to my phone. If a sentence becomes too complicated, stop and begin again. Let me say that another way. What I mean is, I don't know the exact word, but these expressions help you remain calm and keep the conversation moving. A fluent speaker is not someone who never gets stuck. A fluent speaker knows how to continue after getting stuck. Your progress will depend less on occasional motivation and more on consistent practice. You do not need to study for several hours every day. And spend the first few minutes listening to a short piece of clear English. Focus on the main idea, pronunciation, and rhythm. Then repeat one or two useful sentences. Copy the speaker, and afterward change the sentences to make them personal. Next, think about one real or imagined situation. Describe it aloud, or practice a short conversation. Finally, speak freely for 1 or 2 minutes about your day. That is enough to train listening, thinking, pronunciation, and speaking. In one short session, thinking in English. In one short session, thinking in English. Repeat. Imagine. Practice every day. Listening, thinking, pronunciation, and speaking. In one short session, thinking English. Repeat. Imagine. Practice every day. Listening, thinking, pronunciation, and speaking. In one short session. Repeat so your ears and mouth learn to work together. Imagine so you can prepare for real communication, even when you are alone. Practice daily, so these skills gradually become automatic. You can use this routine almost anywhere. Listen to a podcast while traveling. Think in English while preparing breakfast. Repeat a useful sentence from a video. Imagine a conversation while walking. Describe your day before going to sleep. Small actions may not feel dramatic, but they accumulate. One sentence today becomes a familiar pattern tomorrow. 5 minutes of listening helps you recognize an expression in a future conversation. One imaginary situation prepares you for a real moment. Do not ignore small progress. If you answer a question more quickly than before, that is progress. If you understand the main idea of a podcast, that is progress. If you continue speaking after forgetting a word, that is progress. If you notice and correct one mistake, that is progress. Your improvement may feel slow from day to day, but consistent effort creates remarkable changes over time. There will be difficult days. You may feel tired, forget simple words, or believe that you keep returning to the language. Over time, your brain begins recognizing English patterns more quickly. Useful phrases appear with less effort. Translation becomes less necessary, and your mouth becomes more comfortable producing English sounds. Speaking starts to feel more natural, because English is no longer something you only study. It has become something you regularly experience and use. So begin with the English you already know. You do not need to wait until you have mastered every grammar rule. You do not need to wait until you wait. Let your sentences be imperfect while they are growing. Let your pauses become shorter through practice. Let your mistakes teach you what to improve next. And most importantly, do not allow fear to keep your English silent. Your brain learns from what you repeatedly do. When you repeatedly listen, it becomes better at understanding. When you repeatedly think in English, it becomes faster at forming English thoughts. When you repeatedly speak, your words become easier to access. Or will you visualize a conversation you may have soon? Choose one and practice it today. Then share your choice in the comments. Your answer may encourage another learner to begin. If this lesson helped you, subscribe to Luminina Academy and continue practicing with us. But remember, watching is only the beginning. Your real progress starts when you use what you have learned. Take a breath, look around you, create one simple English thought, say it aloud. That sentence does not need to be perfect, it only needs to begin. Keep listening, keep thinking, keep speaking. Little by little, English will stop feeling like a subject you are trying to remember. Your journey toward confident English does not begin tomorrow. It begins with the next sentence you speak.